Ladies and gentlemen, I got another PvE Warlock build for you, but you're probably not gonna like what you're gonna have to do to use it. If you do want to give this Void Demolitions Expert build a try, first things first, just go ahead and reset your seasonal artifact. Because I'm figuring there's probably a 99.9% chance that you either took Breach and Clear or Energy Accelerant in the last column. And we're not going to be using either one of those mods for this setup. Instead, we're going to be making use of Warmind's Decree and Impulse Recycler. And I can hear you scratching your head, saying, "What?" Yeah, two of the less appreciated mods in the artifact for sure, but when working in tandem with the right pieces around them, they can be very effective. If you want to throw all the grenades and make all the Warmind Cells, this build has you covered. And feel free to leave this video a like if at any point you're finding it useful, helpful, or enjoyable. And if you're not already, consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel to catch more Destiny 2 content presented by your favorite Destiny playing Union Ironworker. But with that, let's take a look at what we got going on, and how to assemble this build that's basically about blowing a lot of stuff up. Alright, we'll get the artifact pieces out of the way first. As I mentioned earlier, we want Warmind's Decree, which gives Void Splash Damage Final Blows a chance at creating Warmind Cells. So we're going to be leaning pretty hard into Void. And we're also taking Impulse Recycler, so Grenade Final Blows will grant us Grenade Energy. And one additional mod that you may want to consider is Hammer of the Warmind, if you want to take this build into content where champions are present. Not only does a Warmind Cell detonation stun and lower the damage output of any enemy, but it will also stun Overload and Unstoppable champions. For our subclass, if you haven't already guessed it, we're going with Voidwalker, top tree more specifically, with the Vortex Grenade selected. Why? Well, because the Vortex Grenade becomes a very powerful tool in our kit when amped up by Chaos Accelerant. We also find Entropic Pull on this skill tree, where our charged melee final blows will refund grenade energy. And Bloom, where any Void ability kill causes enemies to detonate, dealing Void Splash damage. We can make use of every facet of the skill tree, and I bet you're starting to get a picture of how things are going to play out here. But moving on, my exotic weapon of choice for this build is Telesto, since 95% of the weapon's damage is Void Blast damage. Plus, it's great for ad clear, strong versus majors, and basically has unlimited range. This weapon slots in fantastic for what we're trying to accomplish. But you do have some wiggle room here if Telesto isn't your style. Null Composure maybe could work, Deafening Whisper, Truth Teller, and bonus points if you do happen to have a Truth Teller with Demolitionist. Void Splash damage is what we're looking for. I'm rolling with Telesto, but you do you. For the exotic armor piece, Contraverse Hold. First off, we'll gain damage resistance when charging our grenade, and taking less damage is never a bad thing. But the thing we're really looking for is that random amount of grenade energy back if our grenade just damages an enemy target. You can expect anything from a quarter to a full grenade refresh. And there is a cooldown timer on the energy refund, but our Vortex Grenade is going to last long enough that we can double dip on the energy returns if we catch an enemy at the beginning and the end of its duration. Also take note of the fact that Impulse Recycler is applied to our gloves, and multiple copies do stack, so I'm doubled up. As for Warmind's Decree and Hammer of the Warmind, they do sit in the combat mod slot, so just socket those ones in wherever you can fit them. This is going to leave you 3 combat mod slots still open, so it's your call on those ones. You can throw on more Warmind Cell mods, Charged with Light mods, Well System mods, it's really your call. But with that, let's take a look at what this setup can do. Alright, quick side note, I was trying to come up with a fun little build name for this setup, but I was having a tough time. Eventually I did settle on Void Demolitions Expert, but my first thought was just to call it Holy because those were the words I kept mumbling as I was using it. But I do try to be a family-friendly content creator, so that just wasn't going to work. But anyway, with this build, as long as you don't biff your grenade, you're literally going to have it up and ready to throw like 90% of the time. Contraverse Hold does a pretty good job of this on its own, but the energy being refunded is random. The double Impulse Recycler takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. Now when you get a full grenade refresh from Contraverse Hold, having those mods equipped may seem redundant. But when you only get a quarter refresh from Contraverse, as long as that grenade nets you a few kills, your grenade energy is going to fly right back up to full. And if something happens to go awry, and for some reason you find yourself without a grenade, just go melee a trash ad and let Entropic Pull do its job. And just a side note here, running Bomber on your class armor can help out with that grenade downtime. It's a mod that I usually have equipped anyway, but I mean, drop a rift, get some grenade energy back, it fits, it works, it helps. And another mod that I didn't mention in the build section, Ashes to Assets. It's cheap in the artifact, it gives you super energy on grenade kills, and you're probably going to be getting a lot of grenade kills. This is by no means essential to the build, but it is a nice benefit. Another thing to factor in here is that you don't need to be at an extremely high discipline tier for this to work out. Obviously, higher discipline is going to help you get your grenade back a little bit quicker in the rare occurrence that it is on cooldown. And I generally keep my discipline right around 8, but I dropped it down to 4 to try and feel out a difference. And honestly, it was barely noticeable. Contraverse and Impulse Recycler do a fantastic job when working together. So you're going to wreak a lot of havoc with just your grenades alone. And that's only one facet of the setup. The Warmind Cell generation potential here is through the roof, especially in an ad-heavy environment. I took this setup into Saros Harbor just to get a feel for what this build was like when it was firing on all cylinders. And I was actually pretty fortunate here because there were some server issues going on, so the game loaded me into my very own instance, with nobody else. I really got to feel the full effect. And the battlefield was absolutely littered with Warmind cells. I was tripping over these things. I was actually getting sick of having to detonate Warmind cells. Not really, Warmind cells are pretty awesome, but you get the point. And if you have a grenade on the field that's still burning, or there's a few enemies spread out that don't warrant the use of a grenade, that's why we brought Telesto. Very solid void splash damage for more chances at generating Warmind cells. Plus, missed shots will stick and linger, waiting for enemies to wander into them, and it does a great job at bursting down major tier targets who are there to spoil your fun. So that's every tool you're going to need to massacre enemies in low to mid-level content. But admittedly, things can get a little tricky in higher tier content. It can work, but there are some things you do need to be mindful of. One, we're obviously stacked up pretty heavy in the void department. If the match game modifier is on in a certain activity, you might have a tough go at it with this build, since we're not all that well diversified. You can cover an alternate element with your heavy weapon, but the build will lose some appeal if you stray away from void in the special slot. If heading into higher end content solo, be mindful of the shields that you're going to be facing. Which, I mean, honestly, you're probably going to be anyway. If you're playing in a group, it would probably be nice to let your buddies know what you're up to, so you can make the proper adjustments within your fire team to cover your bases. Issue number 2, Champions. This is where Hammer of the Warmind can really come in handy. I have 2 copies of Impulse Recycler slotted on my arms. That takes away my ability to slot any anti-champion weapon mods. And you're probably going to need to drop one of those Impulse Recycler mods in favor of an anti-champion mod. Now, Hammer of the Warmind does give Warmind cells the ability to stun unstoppable and overload champions, but the placement of these Warmind cells can become an issue. So I think running Grasp of the Warmind, which allows you to pick up and throw a Warmind cell, is a very worthwhile mod selection here. One more problem you're probably going to run into though, if you've killed off all the ads in an area and the only thing left is a champion, you'd probably wish you had some way to deal with it. So just like with the match game scenario, coordinate with your fire team. Or when solo, know what champions you're going to be facing. This is a pretty impressive and extremely fun build, but on the higher end of things, you do need to respect the content and know the limitations of your loadout. For some closing thoughts, like I said in my Ace Accelerant video, builds aren't really my typical content. But if I find a setup that I've really been enjoying, I feel like it would be almost a mistake not to share it with you. And this build for me definitely falls into that category. Running this setup put a true and genuine smile on my face when I was using it. And I was sitting at my desk giggling to myself every time another Warmind cell popped out of an enemy. It's almost absurd, the number of grenades you can throw and the number of Warmind cells you can touch off with this build. And still, I know a lot of you, even if you made it to this point in the video, might not try it out. Either you don't play on a Warlock, you don't want to bother jacking up your armor setup that you have going already, or you just don't want to reset your artifact and give up Breach and Clear and Energy Accelerant. And those are all completely fair deterrents in my book. But if there's one thing that I personally took away from the making of this video, it's not to disregard the strength of some of the less popular seasonal artifact mods. And we do have some fantastic mods leaving at the end of the month. But this also gets me excited to see what's going to be available next season. If there's something cool that I find, I'll be sure to relay the info. But anyway, if you did enjoy this video, like, subscribe, share it with your friends, any support that you're willing to lend is always greatly appreciated. If you'd like to contact me, Ironworker814 on Twitter, join our community Discord, which is nearly 500 Guardians strong at this point, or just comment down below and I will do my best to get back to you. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this build video. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.